She smiled while he left her broke, but he never saw what was coming. The message arrived while I was helping a customer pick out a summer dress. I'm leaving you, moving to Miami with my girlfriend Kendra. She's 21. Don't bother calling. I've already emptied the joint account. Enjoy your little shop. LOL. I didn't flinch. My hand didn't tremble. I held the hanger steady and offered Mrs. Ellington a polite smile, just like I had for the past 5 years since opening Evelyn and Company, my boutique nestled on the corner of Maple and Fifth. My voice didn't waver as I rang up her total and wrapped her items in soft lavender paper with our signature embossed ribbon. Only my eyes tightened slightly, the way they always had when I clenched my jaw too long. As soon as she left, I locked the door and drew the blinds. My phone buzzed again. Don't be dramatic, Evelyn. You knew we were done. Kendra gets me. She's not cold like you. His name was Grant, my husband of 12 years, a man I once thought I'd grow old with. We had met in our 20s, both dreaming of something bigger. He wanted to climb the corporate ladder. I wanted to create something of my own. For years, we supported each other, or so I thought. But lately, Grant had become a ghost in our home. Late nights, locked phones, gym obsessions, and sudden cologne changes. 3 months ago, I found a dinner receipt for 2 at a place he'd sworn he couldn't afford. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I opened a new account at another bank instead. Over the next few weeks, I moved every penny I'd earned from Evelyn and Company into that private account, slowly, in exact amounts matching my past deposits so he wouldn't notice. When he asked about merging our accounts for simplicity, I smiled and agreed. I knew that text wasn't a shock. It was just confirmation. I'll send for my stuff later. Don't make this ugly. Ugly already left the building, Grant, I thought. Instead of replying, I forwarded the messages to my lawyer, Danica Reyes, who I'd consulted months ago, just after I found hotel charges on our credit card. It's time, I texted. Understood. Filing first thing tomorrow. Do you want him served in Miami? She replied. No rush. Let him believe he's won. Another buzz. Don't worry. You can keep the house. I'm not heartless. My laugh echoed off the boutique walls. That house had belonged to my grandmother. She left it to me in her will. My name was the only one on the deed. Grant had tried multiple times to convince me to add him for security. I never did. He never noticed how quietly I protected myself. He also hadn't noticed I kept copies of every transaction, receipts, credit card statements, screenshots of his Instagram likes on Kendra's half-naked photos. He thought I was clueless. He mistook silence for weakness. My phone lit up again. BTW, I used the joint card to book the flights in the Royal Palm Suite. Consider it a parting gift. Perfect. I dialed the credit card company. Yes, I'd like to report fraud and cancel a card immediately. Yes, I have texts admitting it. Yes, I can send them. Ma'am, would you like to remove him as an authorized user as well? Absolutely. Somewhere in Miami, Grant and Kendra were likely packing sunscreen and planning their glamorous escape. They didn't know they'd be arriving to cancel tickets and no hotel reservation. I poured a glass of Merlot from the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. This qualified. Tomorrow, the storm would come. For him. Tonight, I'd sip my wine and file away every digital footprint he carelessly left behind. The next morning, the texts shifted tone. The hell did you do to the card? The airline says our tickets are invalid. The hotel canceled our room. Call me." I silenced my phone. Friday meant deliveries at Evelyn and Company, new handbags, new displays, a new chapter. That afternoon, Grant's mother called. "Evelyn, dear, Grant told us everything. About your coldness, about how you pushed him away. We had no idea you were being so vindictive." "Did he mention the part where he emptied our account and used our joint credit card to fly away with a 21-year-old? Silence. Then a cough. "Well, he said he felt trapped, that he needed to find himself. Then he can find himself broke." I hung up before she could say more. I'd spent enough years making excuses for a man who mistook my backbone for bitterness. Later that night, Danica called. "We've scheduled the emergency hearing for Monday. Given his messages and the financial evidence, we're in a solid position to freeze all assets. Has he been served?" "Not yet," I smiled, "but I have his new motel address." "Wait, motel?" Danica asked. "Yeah, apparently when the luxury vanished, so did Kendra's patience." I hung up and updated my documentation. The best revenge isn't loud, it's precise. And mine had just begun. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, but I felt nothing but calm. In courtroom 3B, Grant sat on the bench like a man who'd just been hit by a train he never saw coming. Gone were the designer sunglasses and smug smirk. He wore a blazer too tight over a shirt that creased in all the wrong places, a poor attempt to reclaim his youth. Kendra was absent, probably off chasing someone closer to her age who had fewer financial issues and no parent's basement in his future. Danica stood next to me, poised, folders in hand. She looked at Grant like a lioness watching a mouse make noise. The judge, an older woman with keen eyes and a no-nonsense voice, glanced at the printed screenshots. "Mr. Blake," she began, "you admit in these messages to emptying the joint account and using your credit card for personal travel with another woman?" Grant stammered. "It was just, I needed a fresh start." "With stolen money?" Danica asked calmly. "Or do you prefer the word misappropriated?" Grant's lawyer, a frazzled man who clearly hadn't been paid well, tried to interrupt. "Your Honor, my client believes he's entitled to part of the business. It grew during their marriage." "And yet," Danica said, flipping a page, "we have documented proof the boutique was founded with a personal inheritance from Evelyn's grandmother. Separate funds, separate property. She has tax filings, receipts, incorporation papers. The defendant, meanwhile, refers to it in his texts as her little shop and a hobby." I didn't need to look at Grant to feel the sweat gathering at the back of his neck. The judge tapped her pen. "All marital assets are frozen pending dissolution. Mr. Blake is ordered to return any funds withdrawn within 48 hours. "But I don't have it anymore. We spent it." "Then I suggest you figure out how to repay what you stole, Mr. Blake." When we left the courthouse, Grant tried to speak to me. "You planned this, didn't you?" he spat. "You were just waiting to catch me." "No," I said softly. "I was just done ignoring what was already happening. You wrote your downfall. I just read the fine print." His mother stood by her car, eyes downcast. She didn't offer him a ride this time. Over the next few weeks, word spread. Evelyn and Company boomed. Curious locals turned into regulars. Women came in to say, "You showed us how it's done." They bought dresses, bags, and whispered their own stories of betrayal and strength. The boutique wasn't just a store anymore. It had become a symbol. Meanwhile, Grant unraveled. I heard through his sister that Kendra had kicked him out. He tried to crash at a friend's, but quickly wore out his welcome. He blamed everyone but himself, claimed ageism when he was passed over for a promotion, accused me of ruining his reputation by forwarding his own texts to HR. His company gave him a quiet exit shortly after. He filed motions, one after another, trying to claim partial ownership of my boutique, arguing emotional contribution. The court laughed. Emotional contribution? Danica said once. Is that what you call mocking her business while stealing from it? The judge dismissed every claim. One motion included the text where Grant called me a dried-up 38-year-old with a hobby. That was the one I had framed in my office, just above my latest feature in a national women's business magazine. 6 months later, Evelyn and Company opened its second location. I cut the ribbon in front of a crowd of reporters, customers, and women who had followed my story. They didn't talk about the betrayal. They talked about how I turned it into a beginning. One day, while setting up a display of vintage silk scarves, a familiar face walked in. "Kendra?" I said, genuinely surprised. She looked younger than ever, or maybe I just felt older in a good way, wiser, steadier. She clutched her purse like a shield. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she said, "for believing him, for helping him hurt you." I nodded but said nothing. Let her speak. "He told me you were cold, controlling, that you didn't understand him." She looked down. "And then, when things went bad, he used the same excuses on me, same manipulation, same cruelty." "I'm glad you left," I finally said. "We all learn, some sooner than others." Before she walked out, she added, "He's living in a rented room above a garage now. Keeps saying he's going to make a comeback, but he still thinks everyone else is the problem." I didn't respond. There was no need to. At the 1-year anniversary of the second boutique's opening, I stood in front of my employees and guests and offered a toast to the ones who underestimated us. May they underestimate the next woman, too, and may she be just as ready. Later, my lawyer texted, "Grant tried to file again. Judge dismissed it, ordered him to pay your legal fees." I smiled. My boutique had grown to 3 locations. I'd hired over a dozen women. My brand had been featured in a national magazine under the headline, "Built from Betrayal: How Evelyn Blake Turned Rock Bottom into a Retail Empire." Sometimes the most brutal heartbreaks come with the brightest new beginnings. Grant's cruel text was never the end. It was just the beginning of mine. 2 years after Grant's text detonated our marriage like a grenade, I stood in the sunlit entrance of my 4th boutique location. The air was alive with the scent of orchids, laughter, and clinking champagne flutes. Reporters gathered, photographers clicked, but the spotlight wasn't on a woman scorned. It was on a woman who rose. My team had grown to over 30 strong, young women, working mothers, survivors, dreamers. Every one of them brought their stories into Evelyn and Company, and together we turned pain into power. What started as a single boutique on Maple and Fifth was now a thriving brand. And it wasn't just about clothes anymore. It was about identity, resilience, boldness, stitched into every hem. Somewhere in that crowd, I spotted a familiar pair of cautious eyes. Grant's mother, Lydia. She approached after most of the crowd had dispersed. Her designer blazer hung stiff on her frame, guilt wrapped around her like a scarf. Ironically, one she'd bought from my shop. "I didn't come to ask for anything," she said quickly. "I just wanted to tell you I saw Grant yesterday." I raised a brow but didn't interrupt. "He talks about the life he used to have," she said softly. "About what he lost." But he never says your name, not once. He just says the boutique, the house, the money. I folded my arms. Because if he said my name, he'd have to admit he lost a person, not just property. She nodded slowly. I raised him better than this, or maybe I just thought I did. I gave her a tight smile. We all think we know people until we don't. She didn't argue. After she left, I returned to my office. On the wall was the same framed text from 2 years ago. Enjoy your little shop. LOL below it now hung another frame, a magazine cover, me in a crimson blazer smiling in front of my storefront. The headline read, Success isn't petty, it's poetic. That evening, my assistant manager, ironically also named Kendra, though no relation, walked in holding her tablet. We just passed 1 million in online sales, she said with a grin. My throat tightened unexpectedly, not from money, but from how far I'd come, from how many nights I'd stayed up terrified, not of being alone, but of failing, of not being able to prove to myself that I could do it without him, without his approval, without anyone's. Later, at our team dinner, I stood to give a short speech. I hadn't planned one, but the words found me anyway. I built this business for women who'd been told they were too old, too emotional, too weak, for the ones underestimated, overlooked, and pushed aside. This brand isn't just fashion, it's freedom, a reminder that we are not delicate, we are deliberate. Thunderous applause filled the rooftop. That night, as I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity got the better of me. Evelyn, it's Grant. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I messed up big. I lost everything. Melissa, my job, my apartment. I'm staying in a buddy's basement. I've been thinking a lot lately about us, about what we had. I see what you've done with the shop. I always knew you were smart. I just didn't know how much I'd miss you. I was hoping we could maybe talk sometime. No pressure, just talk. I stared at the message. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt done. And then I did something I'd never done before. I opened my notes app, wrote a single sentence. Sometimes the door doesn't close. You just outgrow the room. I blocked his number. No rage, no revenge speech, no dramatic send-off. He wasn't part of the next chapter. A week later, I sat on stage at a women's business leadership conference, surrounded by lights and eager faces. A young woman in the audience asked, "What would you tell someone who's just starting over after heartbreak?" I leaned into the mic, smiling. I'd tell her to protect her dreams like diamonds, keep her records like a hawk, and never mistake silence for surrender. Sometimes the best comeback isn't proving them wrong. It's proving yourself right. Applause rang out. That night, I sipped tea at home, legs tucked under me, paperwork for a 5th location on the table. A breeze came through the open window. Light jazz played in the background. No text, no tension, just peace. The story Grant tried to end with a cruel message, I had rewritten it, word by word, brick by brick, and I was just getting started. 5 years had passed since Grant tried to end my story with a text. The boutique he once mocked had grown into a 5-location brand with its own signature label, partnerships with ethical fashion suppliers, and a growing international customer base. Evelyn and Company was no longer a little shop. It was an empire born from betrayal and built on brilliance. On the day of our 5-year anniversary celebration, I stood inside the original Maple and 5th location, now completely renovated. The air smelled of jasmine and fresh linen. Ribbons hung from the ceiling. Soft jazz filtered through the speakers. Customers, friends, press. Everyone was there to honor the journey. I glanced at the framed text message one last time. Enjoy your little shop. LOL. Beside it, an entire wall of framed milestones, our first six-figure quarter, our feature in Forbes Women in Business, a signed partnership with an international e-commerce platform, letters from young women who said the boutique gave them the courage to start over. A reflection caught my eye in the window. Not a woman scorned, not a woman surviving, a woman who had won, quietly, fiercely, and on her own terms. As I stepped onto the small platform to address the room, I spotted someone I hadn't seen in years. Amanda, Grant's sister. After the speech, she walked over with tears in her eyes. "You have no idea how many people you've helped by just rising," she said. "You could have burned it all down. Instead, you built something." I smiled. "There's more power in building." She nodded, then added quietly, "He still talks about it, you know." About what he lost. But he talks like it was taken from him, not like he gave it up. "I can't help the way he tells the story," I said, "but I know how it ends." She reached into her purse and handed me a worn envelope. "He sent this to Mom. She didn't open it, said it's yours if you want it." Later that night, I opened it. Inside was a note written in Grant's crooked handwriting. "Evelyn, I was wrong, not just about the way I left, but about everything. I thought I was escaping something boring, but what I left behind was the best thing I ever had. Not just you, the life we built, the woman I didn't understand. I see you everywhere now, in articles, in interviews, in the mirror. When I hate who I've become, I'm sorry. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know." Grant. I folded it, slid it into a folder labeled Past, and tucked it into a drawer. That chapter had closed long ago. Weeks later, I stood in front of a class of aspiring women entrepreneurs at a university, guest lecturing. A girl raised her hand. "Ms. Blake, if you could go back and stop that breakup from happening, would you?" The class went silent. I smiled gently. "Number, because then I wouldn't be standing here. Sometimes the worst thing someone does to you is the best thing that ever happens to you." The girl blinked. "Even if it hurt?" "Especially if it hurt," I said, "because that's where you learn who you are." As the class clapped, I thought back to the early days, hiding tears in my shop bathroom, sipping wine alone, wondering if I'd survived the betrayal. And now, here I was, the woman I had always dreamed of becoming. Later that evening, as I walked through the original boutique one last time before closing, I ran my fingers across the old counter. My phone buzzed. A new notification, not from Grant. A wholesale partnership request from Paris. I smiled. No revenge, no bitterness, just growth. The man who left me thought he was walking away from someone who would crumble. Instead, he walked away from someone who would build. And build I did. Because the best revenge, it's not screaming or suing or sulking, it's thriving.